Welcome, dog fans. Another episode of Dog News Daily Live, presented to you by DoMyOwn.com. Here we are, guys. Week 4, going into Columbia, Missouri, where the Dogs will take on the Missouri Tigers and Drew Lock in that just high octane offense. First off, before we jump into way too much football, I want to get into the 2019 UGA schedule, which is just. It looks like it's going to be a big one for the Bulldogs. We should be favored a lot of those games. More in depth here in just a second. We're going to get into the 3-and-out report that we posted on Thursday. But first off, I want to give a shout out to the team over at DoMyOwn.com. As I've said in the last couple posts here and video casts, we got the pre-emergent down at the house. It took 2 days to get me my shipment. Now I'm DIYing like a pro. Fast, free shipping to the house. And now I'm already looking for things here during the off week coming up that I can go ahead and tackle. They helped me out earlier in the spring. I had carpenter bees just chewing up my back deck. Went ahead and got some Delta dust for that. Went ahead and took care of that. No more bees. Actually, we're going to have a cookout here for the next Georgia game, the Georgia-Tennessee game, and already looking for some fly bait stations to keep the flies away while we're trying to grill out. So shout out to those guys. As I mentioned before, they are big-time Bulldog fans and big-time Dog News Daily supporters. So thanks so much, guys, for your support. And we look forward to talking more about you guys and you guys hitting up their website at DoMyOwn.com. All right, let's get into that 2019 football schedule. It was released here earlier this week. A lot of changes to it. It's a huge home week, home schedule for the Bulldogs and Bulldog fans who might be a little bit disappointed with the 2018 schedule. Looking at it here, we open up on the road at Vanderbilt. That's always a fun trip for Georgia fans, going up to Nashville, getting their honky tonk on. What better way to spend Labor Day than in Nashville, right, guys? So it's going to be at Vandy. I would imagine it's either going to be an early kick or a night game. Obviously, Georgia should be favored. We kind of come out a little lackluster against Vandy just because a lot of our players have actually played in a high school stadium that's bigger than theirs. So, Georgia fans will be there. It's only about a 4.5-hour ride from Atlanta. So expect the Bulldog Nation to be there and be loud and proud. We got a couple cupcakes after that. And then we get Notre Dame at home September 21st, it looks like. That's going to be a huge game. Expect that to be prime time. I'm not sure if it's probably going to be an NBC game since it's a Notre Dame game. I expect that to probably be a night game. Expect College Game Day to probably be there. I have not seen any of the other schedules yet involving some of the other national ranked teams, Alabama's, the Ohio States, the Clemson's. Haven't seen their schedules yet for that week, but I'm imagining that's a big-time game. Notre Dame's coming down south, so expect that to be a big game. Here's a couple quirks there that we're not used to for previous schedules for Georgia. We have 2 bye weeks this year. This happens from time to time. It really just depends on when Labor Day falls, is if you're going to get that extra bye week. Georgia gets it this year. We get it again before Florida. The one thing that really stands out to me and to the staff here at Dog News Daily, I'm sorry, I guess if I'm looking down here, I'm just checking out all the notes that I've taken here on the schedule. November is this: Florida, Missouri, Auburn, Texas A&M, and Tech. Think about that schedule right there for a second. One, there's no bye weeks in November for Georgia. We usually get I'll call it a cupcake game, a practice game going into the Georgia Tech game. We usually use that week for a little bit of more prep. Kirby does say that we are prepping a little bit more or weekly for a spread offense, but we don't get that. We don't get that bye week, and we'll call it, or that practice game before the Georgia Tech game. So that could throw a little, problem in the schedule. think about these schedules that Georgia's going to face in November, or just the offenses that we're going to be facing. Florida, you would expect it can only get better with Dan Mullen and their offense there. A lot of RPOs. You get Missouri, Drew Lock. We imagine who we're facing this week. By the way, we'll get into that in just 1 second. Drew Lock will be graduated. They'll be rebuilding, but they're going to want to be they're going to want to be that spread offense. You get Auburn, which is going to be a heavy run game, a lot of misdirection, but a lot of that ground and pound. Then you're going to get A&M. Monda, or Kelly Mond, I think his name is, at the quarterback for Texas A&M, who looks to be a young but stud for Texas A&M. When he almost led them to beat Clemson here earlier this year. They're coming to Athens the second to last weekend in November. So that should be a huge game. And that offense is going to be a lot pass heavy, a lot of running, similar to what Florida State's run here in years past. So, you're expecting them to get built up and that to be a big game for Georgia, and probably get a lot of national attention as well. And then we end up with Tech. So we got Tennessee away. Tech is going to be away, A&M at home, Auburn at Auburn. And then you get Missouri at home, and Florida is going to be that next game. So it's a tough schedule for Georgia. Georgia will come in highly ranked in that game or into that 2019 season. But you got to like the mix of the home games and where that's at. Each month of the season, Georgia has at least 2 home games. So that is as a positive. They're not on the road over and over and over. So that's a very huge deal for Georgia. To have the 2 cupcakes back to back in weeks 2 and 3 is kind of surprising. I thought that they would have A&M or someone else a little bit higher up there, but it just kind of goes with how the schedule fell. I'm not sure how much Georgia has to do in working with that schedule and negotiating that, but it is what it is, Dog fans. So 2019 looks like to be a big schedule for the Dogs. We've still got a long ways to go in the 2018 season. So let's get into the 2018 and actually this week's game. Why don't we? The 3-and-out report we posted on Thursday. If you haven't read it, go to dognewsdaily.com. Just an in-depth review of really the players, the positions we're going to look at that we feel that are very key to that week's game. To this Missouri game, we had 3 really stand out, two positions, and then really one player. I kind of cheated a little bit. I've added a second player. It's not on the report, so you only can get it here on the video. But first off are the wide receivers. Last year in the Georgia-Missouri game, Georgia was 4 yards shy of hitting 700 yards of offense. You heard that correctly, 700 yards of offense. That's huge for Georgia. I remember Godwin is really a coming out game for Mecole. He scored, I believe, once or twice in that game, but just a big game for Georgia. A lot of wide open space. We really took advantage of a weak defensive backfield for Missouri, which they currently have again this year, especially after what I saw in the Purdue game. We'll get more to that in a second as well. But I expect big games. Riley Ridley, Godwin, if he's healthy, had a little shin issue in the Middle Tennessee State game, was shown walking off of the field with some ice wrapped around his lower leg. So if they can hold him out, they will. But he's looks like he's a full go in practice this week. But look for him. Look for J.J. Holloman, Jeremiah Holloman, whatever you want to call his first name there. Huge week against Middle Tennessee State. That guy looks like an animal. In the 65-yard catch he had from Jake Fromm in that Middle Tennessee State game, it's just amazing that he's going up. He's catching that ball at its highest point with his hands. A lot of these guys you're seeing, they're coming in and trying to trap it against their body. The guy's got huge, monstrous hands, and he's going out there and making big-time plays. I wouldn't be surprised if possibly Georgia unleashes the Demetrius Robertson this week. Hasn't really been seen a lot in the first 3 games. A couple runs. I think he had one pass last week. So expect to possibly see him as we will probably be throwing a little bit more this week than we are in typical weeks. Last year, Jake Fromm actually has career high of 326 yards, kind of his coming out game, showing that he was ready for the big time and for the prime time. 326 yards passing. Just a huge week for him last week. It's really a huge week for him this week, and he's actually number 2 on our 3-and-out report this week. Is Jake, as cool and calm and as his numbers are reflecting, he's the man. He's the starting quarterback for the Georgia Bulldogs. The issue is he doesn't look as calm, as cool as he did as when he was a freshman. When I say that is, he looks a little antsy. He looks like he's holding the ball a little bit longer than he typically would. I'm not sure if that's by Kirby and Coach Chaney are really looking at it and going saying, hey, let's protect this ball and really focusing and pounding on him. Hey, how important it is for him to keep that, to hold on to the ball and what ball security is. Next is he not taking the chances and throwing those deep balls that you saw in the Middle Tennessee State game? He held on to he held on to the ball once and got sacked. Second one, he tries a little dump off to Elijah Holyfield, doesn't work out. Now, if Elijah catches that, he runs for probably 30, 40 yards. It's wide open. But the deep ball is there, and he just – I'm not sure – I'm not saying he doesn't trust his wide receivers, but he's not throwing it up there for grabs and not really putting the team in any kind of trouble. But he's also not getting it, pushing the ball downfield to his playmakers. Another thing is this. You got Justin Fields waiting in the wings. So if he makes a couple mistakes, and maybe that's something in his mind where he's saying, hey, if I make a couple mistakes here, they're going to throw Justin in. And, Justin goes down, scores a few times, is the highlight reel that a lot of dog fans thinks he is. Maybe he is the guy, so not sure what I think. I think this is a big week for Jake because he should be salivating watching the game film in the film room this week. They gave up Missouri gave up 572 passing yards to Purdue. To a guy, by the way, who went out, I believe, on the second or third play of the game. Backup quarterback threw for 572 yards against Missouri. So Jake Fromm, if they let him, and if he plays this much, I don't think he's going to throw for 500 yards this week. Dog fans, be pretty sweet, but I don't think he's going to. I'm looking for in that 300 range, 300 yard range. We're really going to look for a lot of underneath routes. What they do in this scheme, Missouri just doesn't really have the horses to keep up with Georgia. So they're going to try to play man-to-man. They're going to try a lot of different blitz and pressure packages on Jake, and obviously we want to pound the ball. So what's going to happen is we're going to want to run the ball. When they run the ball, linebackers are going to want to be sucking up on that and trying to stop the run. We're going to run some little underneath routes, some slants underneath to keep the pressure on the linebackers. So they're looking back and forth. Is it a slant? So they're going to a lot of RPO action here this week. If the hands off, that sucks in the linebackers. That way we get our one-on-one opportunities to throw it deep. And then once again, one of those underneath routes that Miko is just fantastic at catching the ball and getting and going in space. So big week for Jake Fromm. Like to see how he bounces back from a shaky first few games. I know he's 80. I think it's 82 or 85% in completion percentage. It's just his moxie in the pocket seems a little bit different. That's all. Just something I've noticed in comparison to 2017 when he kind of looked like Cool Hand Luke out there. Next up is the defensive line. And the defense, I feel, is taking a lot of unjust criticism for not getting the sacks. They're actually currently last in the NCAA in sacks. I think we have one out of 128 teams. We are dead last. Now, put this into some context for you. We've played Middle Tennessee State, who gets the ball out very quickly, 2 seconds, 2 to 3 seconds. It's hard to get to the quarterback in that time. You've placed South Carolina, does the same thing. Once it gets out, it's that spread offense, quick throws. It's hard to go in there and put the pressure in on these quarterbacks and get the sacks because they're not doing these 5 to 7 step drops and surveying the field. What they're doing is they're getting it out. They're looking at their first read and throwing it. And if that's not open, they're looking at their second quickly, and the play's just deteriorating because the defensive line's getting a push. And that's why my third position that we're really looking at, and the staff is all agreed on, is our defensive line, and that's really getting a push. Not so much getting all the sacks. We do expect DeAndre Walker to be unleashed, is what we'll call it, and to be attacking and be flying in there like we're used to seeing him. But the defensive line, guys like Tyler Clark, Jonathan Ledbetter, um, Clark Ledbetter. We're looking at Beal, look at Grant. We're looking at a lot of these guys. DeAndre Walker, once again, these guys just coming in and taking the pocket for Drew Lock to be like this, and just slowly make it harder and harder for him to get in. And next thing he starts feeling that pressure, we're getting hands up in his face, and we're knocking down balls, and that's very frustrating for quarterbacks when they're just the pockets collapsing on them and no one's open. So those guys are, as I mentioned, Ledbetter, Clark, Julian Rochester. Those guys are going to have to be living in Missouri's backfield, just really putting up a good push. Now, Missouri's got a good offensive line, and they have a good defensive line as well. So there's some big boys. We're not just going to be able to easily apply pressure and only bring 4 guys. So expect some corner blitzes. Expect some not misdirection, just some misreads from Drew Lock, just giving him some different looks that he's not used to seeing. Speaking of not used to what they're seeing, is I added a +1 here this week. Once again, this is just for our video. Tyson Campbell is another guy that he's shown to by all means, he's playing the part of defensive back. He's the size, he's the strength, he's the speed, and he's the smarts. But as we saw in last year's game, Emmanuel Hall got behind the defense very quickly in 2 games. And on one of these throws, I remember looking at it and saying, he's open, but he can't get that ball there. And, by God, it's 63 yards in the air for a touchdown. And, next thing you know, it's 14-14 in that game last year very quickly with 260. I think they both were 63-yard strikes for touchdowns to Hall. Georgia, Kirby obviously saw what was happening there, told them, hey, keep everything in front. And as you see, as the game progressed on, Georgia, hey, don't let a wide receiver get behind you. Keep everything in front of you, which is one thing I'm noticing when watching these games. You're not seeing a lot of catch and runs against Georgia. They might get some completions on them, but everything's staying in front of them, and they're hitting on contact. As soon as they get the ball, they're hitting them. They're putting them down. As minimal after the yard, yards after the catch that you can see or get against the Bulldogs. And that's something that can be frustrating to not a lot of explosive plays. Actually, Georgia is number 1 in the nation this year with only 2 explosive plays against them this year. Now, we've only played Austin Peay, South Carolina, and Middle Tennessee State, so we expect some probably this week as well, some more than 20-plus yard plays against Georgia. Second best in the nation is Alabama with 12. I think there's a couple actually tied with Alabama in that. But from 2 to 12, that's a big stop and a big gap there. So that's something that we're noticing with what Georgia's doing very well and limiting those big time plays. So Tyson Campbell's going to get a lot of different looks. What I was getting back to. So, they're not going to throw. You wouldn't think that they would try to throw against DeAndre Baker. South Carolina made that mistake, came out and threw his way. I think first series of the game. Next thing you know, it's a interception for a touchdown for Baker. The guy is lived up to the hype. He's an All-American, and he's playing like one this year. So they're going to look over to the other side. They're going to definitely test Campbell. He has the size, once again, 6'2", 6'3", and at that speed, I believe he's a 4.34. Some touted as the fastest Bulldog on the team. So that should be pretty a test for Tyson Campbell. So we're definitely going to be looking out for him and how he handles this high flying attack from Missouri. We see it this way. We see it very similar to the South Carolina game, dog fans, in our prediction of the game and how that flows. We expect, I put out on the 3-and-out report that Georgia, it's an 11 o'clock start game for them out there. And yes, it's 12 o'clock Eastern, so 11 o'clock out there. So it's an early start. Last time I remember a game like this was Kirby's first year against Ole Miss, where we absolutely got boat raced by them. I think we were down 45-0 at one point. Obviously, don't expect that to happen this week, but we came out a little sleepy in that game. Just dropped a lot of balls. Just really felt like we weren't there and focused for that game. So with this Central Time Zone, with an early start, we could see a little bit of a groggy go of the for the Bulldogs. The good thing is this is defense travels. Offense, sometimes you can be a little off, and they need to be picked up by a run game or by the defense. The defense travels. That's the main thing. Once again, for the Bulldogs, that's going to carry them in 2018. So we're expecting kind of a slow start for the Bulldogs, and then starting to get ramped up. The good thing for the Bulldogs is this: their depth is like none other. Possibly Alabama, Clemson, the Ohio States have it, but Georgia is in that top tier to where the next man up. It's not a huge gap from the ones and twos, and that's why you're seeing a lot of guys switching starting positions and coming in and playing. And there's really not a lot of drop off there. So we're thinking, as much as I put into this game, I put down a final score 55-27. The Bulldogs scored 53 last year, and like I said, threw it all over the place. The one thing when I put up the score, I think Georgia's a 48-55 point score this week. They gave up 40 last week to Purdue. So I think the Bulldogs definitely are salivating and can put up the points. We've scored 40, at least 40 points every game this year. It's going to be very hard for Georgia's going to have to get in their own way not to score in the high 40s, if you ask me, in this game. The funny thing enough with the high numbers here, I think the 27 might be hard for them to reach, for Missouri to reach. I look back on it; they scored 28 last year against the Bulldogs. The defense was a little bit better last year, in my opinion. At that time, that we did have Roquan on the team, and Lorenzo and Davin on that team. Obviously, Dominic Sanders and the others, but we gave up quick 14 points. We limit them to only 2 more scores the rest of the game for that to be 53-28 in that final score. I'm going to keep it at 27. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a similar score to the South Carolina game, a 41-17, 45-17 game. I'm going to keep it at 55-27. I expect that kind of point spread in between the two teams. But for you dog fans, that are trying to guess and trying to predict the score here this week. We actually have a contest going on this week. The Dog News Daily T-shirts are here. They're in. They're ready for you guys to be on you and for you guys to be wearing those. Here's the contest on all 3 social media platforms: Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. So here's it is. Like, share, recommend if it's on Facebook, recommend it. Like the home page now, not the post, the home page. Share, you can share it on Twitter. Like it on Facebook, like our page on Instagram. So get on there. You have to do that first to qualify. Second, you have to guess the correct score for the Georgia-Missouri game. Already have a lot of tweets and Facebook messages on this, and a lot of those guys are very similar to my scores. I won't give them all up. You guys get on the page and go check it out for yourselves. The tiebreaker is this: if we get a bunch of guys guessing the correct score, if it's 41-10, and we got 5 guys or gals doing it, we expect the tiebreaker is going to be this. Also, guess how many yards DeAndre Swift is going to rush for this week. Only got 4 carries in the Middle Tennessee State game with some, I'll call them rumors, some looks that he's got a little nagging groin injury or hamstring injury there. So last week we said, guess what James Cook's rushing yards were, and no one had 1. So I think he gets a little bit more than 1 yard this week, especially if it's 100%. So that's the tiebreaker. If you guess the correct score and you got another guy or gal or a dog fan there with you that's guessed the same score, you guys have to decide what DeAndre Swift's closest or what his rushing yards are going to be for the total. So that's it here this week for Dog News Daily. Once again, thanks so much to our sponsors at domyown.com. Go check out their website. Go get your yard game day ready and go DIY like a pro. So we look forward to getting back with you guys next week. Good luck to all the Bulldog fans that are traveling out there to Columbia, Missouri this week. And as always, from Dog News Daily, go Dogs.